I once was told by my mentor years ago that because I said, "Well, I don't know enough to teach anybody anything." And he just looked at me, "You'll know more than the person you're teaching." And so I thought, yes, I can do that with coaching new appraisers. I've been there. I opened my own business. I ran it for 22 plus years. So I've been there, I've done it.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry Seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about.
Yes.
Your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hersh Rephun.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
Who is in the hot seat today on Yes Brand? It is Karen Howard. Karen is known as the Jewelry Appraisers Coach. That's her new company. She coaches new appraisers to help them overcome the challenges of their first year in business. That's when they're needing to cover everything from client communication to ethical practices. Her work's been featured in a couple dozen media outlets already, from Yahoo Finance and Fox 4 to NBC and WGN Chicago. And everywhere she goes, they're highlighting her contributions to professional standards and training in the appraisal industry. And she knows from whence she speaks because she's a veteran a gemologist herself and a formal appraisal business owner with 3 decades in the jewelry trade. So we're going to learn about jewelry appraising, but also learning about jewelry appraising, which is kind of a meta way to go about it. But how is this craft going to continue without people being mentored and trained by others who know the business inside and out? Welcome, Karen, to the Yes Brand podcast.
Thank you, Hersh. And I'm glad to be here and just able to give a little bit of background about jewelry appraising. It's a subject a lot of people don't understand or know much about. So glad
Yeah,
to.
thank you. Thank you for being here. And that's a good place to start too, which is that, here's what the average, person knows about gems. They're pretty, they're shiny, they can cost a lot of money, and sometimes it's the best thing that we think we can do is buy the best, but we don't know, what the best is. I think I mentioned to you when we talked another time that my son Arye is a jeweler in Manhattan. So he's a designer. He works with gems, but I had very little experience, mostly around buying engagement bands and rings and necklaces and things. But we're selective about the expertise we retain, you know. But
We
what?
are,
Yeah,
and it's interesting because I always found it fascinating when I was running my business as an appraiser that people will spend thousands and thousands of dollars in a store that they don't know the people that are running the store on a piece of jewelry, and then come to an appraiser and expect them to give them a value, say that yes, they bought the right thing, but it shouldn't cost them anything to do that. That was sort of my biggest thing was like,
yeah.
well, you're coming for my expertise that I've had to train for a long time to get, and expect that that is going to be a free thing after spending thousands. And so it people have to realize that being a jewelry appraiser is a profession, and it's taken a long time for someone to get their education and to get the experience to
Yeah.
to actually appraise a piece of jewelry.
Well, that's a good segue to what does it take? What does it take to really to become an appraiser?
Well, to me, there's four main steps. That one is you become a gemologist, and that could be depending where you are in the world and what course you're studying, could be anywhere from accelerated course of maybe 6 months to a 2 to 3 year program. It just depends on how you're taking it. But that's just the basics. That just gets us to understand and identify gems.
Yeah.
So then we have to learn how to grade them. And so you would have to take a diamond grading course. You have to take a colored stone grading course. And then you have to take a scientific valuation course. And then you start thinking about, okay, how do I run a business if I'm going to open my own business?
Yeah. And how, when we see I've spent a decent amount of time on 47th Street in Midtown Manhattan, and I used to work right around the block from the Diamond Center. So I'm familiar with the stores and the process and the security that you go through going in there. My uncle was a diamond expert. After an entire career of being an educator,
Mhm.
he became interested in diamonds, um, and I could see him as someone who's very exacting about information and quality. That would be a good shift for him. But when you see people with the what do you call the eye the what do you
The
call
loop,
the
jeweler's loop.
loop, a jeweler's loop. See, there you go. Looking through the loop and kind of scrutinizing, and how how universal are these evaluations? In other words, if somebody grades a diamond, based on their evaluation, what room is there, let's say, for difference of opinion about?
Okay. There's two things there. One is the evaluation of the article, and one is the
Right.
valuation of the article.
Yes. Yeah.
The evaluation shouldn't be too far apart. We allow for 1 to 2 grades difference because it is my eye, say my eye against another appraiser's. So, for instance, if I say the color is a G and they say it's an H, that's acceptable because
Mm,
we just don't know. Maybe the lighting was a little bit different or their eyes see slightly different. It doesn't matter, your masters, we, have to do it against a set of masters when we're talking diamonds. But there could even be that slight difference because we are using natural diamonds and natural diamonds come from nature and nature never produces everything the same. So
that's right.
that's the about the maximum we want to see is 1 grade either way of something. But valuation can be totally different because it depends on the market in the area where you're valuing. It could be the difference of the dollar to the American dollar or whatever, like for instance, Canadian dollar, where I am, or say the Australian dollar to the American dollar, because everything is based on American dollar still. So.
Yeah. And what is the um, impact or influence these days from the synthetic market?
Well, it depends on which one you're talking about. If you're talking about synthetic
Lab
diamonds,
created,
lab created
yeah.
diamonds, yeah, it hit the natural diamond quite hard for a while. The natural diamonds are coming back, and the lab grown have totally done what I said they would do years ago when they first came out. And that is they are falling in price. They're falling in value. Some appraisers won't even value lab grown now because they're going to change. They're just going to keep dropping. They will, I think, at some point find some place where they're going to level out, just like other synthetic stones have done. And although, the hype has been, oh, they're not synthetic, they're lab created. It's the same thing. They were grown in a lab, same as a synthetic ruby was grown in a lab. They will find their own market. There's a market there. The biggest thing to me is that it's done in a way that the consumer knows what they've bought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's ultimately what we're talking about is, how do you know what you're buying? So another thing you can share maybe is when we talk about size, of a diamond or cut and clarity. Um, what are the if you're advising a novice,
Hmm.
let's say, or you're training someone who's new to the market. Um, what what are some initial thoughts to be aware of around the various aspects?
Okay, not totally sure what you're asking, Hirsch, but let me
Oh,
answer to what
that's
I
my
think you're
ignorance.
asking.
That's the ignorance taking the lead there, asking what I don't know about what
Um,
I don't know.
okay, but I'm gonna approach it the way I think it should, the way I think here.
Please.
If you're talking about going as a consumer to buy a diamond, and you're looking at, okay, the size of a diamond or the cut of the diamond or the color of the diamond, and you're looking at what do I go for the most?
Yes. Yeah.
What's the best thing I should be looking at? My first thing is always get the best cut you can afford, because everything else, once it's mounted, once it's, on your hand or in a necklace or in your earrings, no one's going to know.
Yeah.
So get the best cut in the largest size you want. Like for me,
Yeah.
I never wear large size diamonds because to me, they look fake once they're on me
Yeah.
because I can't afford them. So, um, simple as that. Um, but yeah, so for me, it's the cut, the best cut, because that is what the light return that we expect, that sparkle and the dazzle, that comes from how well it's been cut. Along with then, the color, yes, because we don't want something that's got a lot of yellow in it unless it's a yellow diamond.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
and then inclusion, if you get to below, say, an SI2 and into some of the I1s that they have out there, I would be more hesitant to buy those because a good whack or that the inclusions could break that diamond up. So
Uh-huh. Yeah.
they're not as stable.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of attention is paid to, you mentioned once you have it set, once you're wearing the jewelry, once you're wearing the ring or the necklace or the bracelet, it becomes part of something else entirely. It's no longer on a piece of, felt or, looking through the loop, right? Now it's part of the entire presentation,
Mhm.
and that has, little to do, one would think, with the actual diamond that's featured, let's say. Um, but in your line of work, how do you, so let's say someone were to bring in something that's, it has a whole setting, it has baguettes, it has, it's an object at that point. How do you
Which,
evaluate it?
which is definitely where my profession came in. We have to piece it down and we have to look at every stone that's in it. We have to identify every stone. We have to grade every stone. It doesn't matter whether there's one or 180. It doesn't matter. We have to look at every single one. We also look at the construction of the item itself, the metal, how it's been put together, how it's been finished. You're evaluating absolutely everything to do with that piece of jewelry. What year was it made, or what era was it made? Because certain eras, we'd expect that we won't see certain things. The technology is different on how something was put together. So there's a lot more than what people think of. Okay, here's my diamond ring. Can you tell me what the value is? Nope,
Right.
sorry, I can't. So there's a lot of research involved in being a jewelry appraiser. My specialty ended up being more into the vintage and antique jewelry because it was a passion that I really liked. So I did a lot of reading and research on it, and I looked at it wherever I could, went to auctions to look at it. And so I became known for that. Um,
Yeah.
as well.
How far back does that antiquing go? When are we looking at in terms of the beginning of what we would consider these pieces even?
Oh, way back to the Egyptian. We have found jewelry back in Egyptian time, and it's
Yeah.
done in gold. So you could go that far back. Yeah, I mean, if you found a piece like that, it would be
Yeah.
totally museum quality, not something we'd have in an everyday. In an
Right.
everyday, across my desk, I've gone back as far as the Rococo period. till
Mm-hmm.
1700s,
Yeah.
something that's
Yeah.
come down through the family.
Yeah.
Not a lot more in Europe than we do over where I am.
Well,
So,
that makes sense. That
yeah.
makes sense. But okay, so now as a jewelry appraisers coach,
Mhm.
what inspired that? What inspired that transition to say I'm going to train people?
Well, a personal crisis happened in my life that made me reevaluate what I wanted to do. But I had been teaching um, the science valuation part of appraising already. And while I was doing that, I had so many of my students ask me if I'd coach them, if I'd mentor them through their business, because I kept giving them tips on business because that was my background before I became a gemologist was business. And so I thought, I started looking around when I was looking for what I was going to keep doing and realized that there's just not much of it being done in that aspect for jewelry appraisers that want to open their own business. So I started Jewelry Appraisers Coach to try and help. I once was told by my mentor years ago that because I said, well, I don't know enough to teach anybody anything. And he just looked at me, you'll know more than the person you're teaching. And so I thought, yes, I can do that with coaching new appraisers. I've been there. I opened my own business. I ran it for 22 plus years. So I've been there, I've done it. And so I can bring that to new jewelry appraisers, plus the experience of appraising jewelry and gemology. I can offer a bit more of a package than just a business coach.
Yeah. Yeah. And what is the marketplace like now for appraisers?
Um, it's a tough market right now, because of all of the ups and downs, just in general, in with the volatility of what's going a lot around in the world right now. I was just at a conference. In fact, I just got back a week and a half ago, all on jewelry valuation. And we were there from all over. It was in England, but somebody there from Australia, and so we were me from Canada, and so it was quite a group that got together. Um, we're we're all still interested in making sure that our businesses, the industry is getting better rather than and that we're contributing and making sure that jewelry appraising is getting better. Um, but we have to look at what technology is doing to us and what the consumer thinks we should be doing. And yeah, so it's an interesting time to be a jewelry appraiser.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious how technology, other than obviously the lab grown, diamond, question, but how is technology affecting the appraising world?
Well, as an appraiser, it used to be you'd have certain instruments and you didn't need really fancy ones. Your microscope was probably the fanciest piece or the most expensive piece you had. That's not necessarily true anymore. You either have to have or have access to, spectrometer machines and that will do the readings for you. I always, the last few years when the small lab-grown diamonds came into the market, I just put a disclaimer on my work saying that, without screening them all in an expensive machine, I could not guarantee the mellies were not lab-grown. Um, and that unfortunately is part of the business. It's becoming more expensive to be an appraiser if you want to
Mm,
have all the equipment. The screening of lab grown sort of showed us we had to come up as soon as the lab grown really was prevalent in the market. We had to come up with machines that could help us identify them. There were ways if we could see the inclusions, but the clean ones that they were making, we weren't. It was very difficult for us to do.
what is buyer sentiment like around lab grown? You mentioned they're going down in value. What's been the feeling out there in the among the buyer, among the
Well, I
consumer,
think
I should say.
Yeah, the consumer, I think, is upset that their lab growns are going down. They don't understand the concept totally. They're not getting the information. They believe that lab grown is same as diamond, and it is, but it isn't. It's not found in earth. It's not. It hasn't taken billions of years to create that beautiful crystal. It has taken hours to create.
Yeah.
And if they saw what the lab grown crystals look like, they go, God, that's ugly. But um, they're also fed the information that they're ethical and I go, but they're a factory. Where
Yeah.
they're ethically mined. Well, yeah, but what about all the materials that you had to mine to create the machines that we create them in? Like there's a whole process that way. Um, but as I said, I think there's a market for them. It's just consumers have to get the correct information, and
Right.
they weren't. It was being very romanticized for a long time.
Yeah, which is probably the hardest thing to do with that. In other words, that's the missing piece. What's the difference between digital art and something that's been painted by hand, with oils and it's like, well, this was done on a computer, and it's beautiful, and it it may render something quite arresting, but it doesn't have the tactile features that something that's been, like you say, even if it's been done by the earth, that's been shaped and compressed and formulated and is the result of something. And that's kind of, that whole provenance is like that's a part of art. That's a part of why people invest in
Mhm.
art or gems. What their the valuation is exactly the appeal. And then of course there's the aesthetic. So if it
And
was
this,
just an aesthetic, but what were you going to say?
well, I was going to say, but then, and it's also the story
Yeah.
of that gem and where did it come from? If you can, and there right now there is a big thing in the industry of origin of the gems.
Hmm.
I sort of hesitate on that. But it's the story of where did that piece and where did that gem come from and how did it get put together into that piece of jewelry? Um, with my appraisal, my personal appraisal on my wedding ring, the story's written into the appraisal. So
Mm.
that my kids know the story of how this ring came to be. Um, and being in the industry, my story is totally different to everyone else's, but yeah, and my kids found that fascinating, and so
Yeah.
the kids will too, as it gets passed down. That will go and I always said to my clients, if you have a story that you want with it, I'm glad to add it as part of your appraisal.
Oh,
You
that's
know,
beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah,
if you
that
remember grandma wearing it and know where she got it
right.
from, put it in there.
Right.
It's part of
And
it. It's
that's so much of it. That's
yeah.
so much of it. So now let's talk a little bit about your business. Now let's
Mhm.
take a step back and say, okay, well, Karen, you have this expertise. You're offering this service. You are an expert. Um, what are your goals for this uh, jeweler's appraisal coach business? Like how would you like to see that get out there to the audience? Who is your audience? Talk to us from that point of view.
Okay. So my audience, for the most part, is new appraisers that are starting out. They're looking for some help in pretty much every area, but mainly in just how do they get their business from startup to success. First year is typically hard in any business. We know that. Most businesses will fail in the first couple of years. So I want to help people avoid that. With my background in business, and with all the years of jewelry experience, it was like, well, where do I go? What do I want to do? And I kept hearing that voice inside my head that's, of former students saying, help, I need help. I don't know, I didn't know that. What about that? And so I thought, yes, let's see if I can help the new people avoid some of the pitfalls that they have enough to worry about without having to struggle just to get their business up and running. And so for that, I started Jewelry Appraisers Coach. I've finished my first book. It is now being edited. I'm not sure when it's coming out, but I'm waiting for it to come out because it goes right along with the coaching I do.
Oh,
Um,
that's wonderful. What is the book going to be called?
a practical guide for jewelry appraising. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, from startup to success, a practical guide. It's not super long, but it's covers all the main things that a jewelry appraiser has to know from the tools that they need to start, some of the tools that they might want to get along the way, to the ethics, how to deal with the customers that may not be the most pleasant all the time. All of that stuff is in there to try and help them.
Well, that's exciting. It sounds to me like it would be quite a definitive, guidebook in a way, and cover the things that are really relevant with the mastery of it. And that's the best kind of mentorship. That's the best kind of guidance that somebody can provide, right?
Well, I'm hoping that's what it comes across. And I had a couple of people say, "Well, why don't you just write a business book?" And I went, "But my people are the new appraisers, the ones, because I do meet them still, and they're wanting the information." And it was, where do they go to get it? So I'm slowly spreading the word that I'm
Yes.
doing this. It was interesting, as I said, I ran into a colleague from Australia, and she said, "Well, we haven't got anything like that over there." So I sent off a couple of emails today to some organizations over there to let them know it's available.
Well, that's an interest that leads me to wonder who is the type or ideal person that becomes an appraiser. In other words, do you have insight into the personality types or the kind of bent that someone would have that they would say to themselves, "Hey, I want to be a jewelry appraiser."
Well, as you start this talk off with, they like shiny things,
Right,
shiny
right,
parts of things. Yeah,
exactly.
that's sort of the first part. And to be an appraiser, you have to be detail oriented. There's
Right.
just no getting away from it. So the personality is, they're very detail oriented. They're very motivational on their own. They don't need a lot of guidance, and they like to do research because that's the bulk of what we do is research. But being detail oriented because we have to be able to hold up what we say in court if needed. And
Hmm.
that is something that people don't realize either, is that that is a big part of what we do, is we have to be able to defend what we're saying. So we have to do the work behind it.
Right.
My
Right.
students got tired of me saying that.
Well, you could see now you could have a whole series of these books because the initial book is kind of the entryway into it, but then there could be the science of appraisal, the business of appraisal, the fun of appraisal, you know, that those things, so that you're kind of always providing to the audience, whoever they may be. There are probably people who would buy that book just because of their interest in being good consumers and thinking, well, I should learn a little something about the business. And some people like to learn from the inside, talk to
Yeah.
somebody on the inside.
And I wrote this book with the thought that if someone does pick it up that isn't an appraiser, that's maybe thinking about being an appraiser, they'll get an insight into what it's like to be an appraiser, just by
Yeah.
the information that's in there. I tell it throughout it. I've told stories about, just different things that may have happened along the way, whether it's to me, whether it's to other appraisers I've known. Like I started out, I went to my mom's shut-in friends and who hadn't had their diamond rings off for 40 years.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I sat there cleaning and having tea with them. And that's how I started my business, which gave me a great insight into the fact that the stories, sometimes it's not about what value I give them. It's the sitting there and listening to their stories about their jewelry and
Yeah.
where they got it was as important as what I was actually going to do for them. So,
Yeah. Oh, that's another thought. Another thought another thought is like, the glitter, story reflections on the origins of appraisal stories, things like that that are history and the magic of it. That whole thing. Um, you know, you can go as romantic on that as you want. You could call it endless light. You could call it reflections.
Okay,
Um,
my next book is it, Hersh?
yeah, I definitely see a lot of books in your future, Karen. Well, where can people find you?
I'm at jewelryappraiserscoach.com or thelanguageofgems.com because I do teach classes on diamond grading and colored stone grading to jewelry appraisers as well as just some general interest courses for the average consumer in my area. So those two websites, and I believe I'm going to send you some links that people can go and get a couple of freebies if they want.
Oh,
Like
wonderful. Thank you. And we will have those in the show notes, of course. And it's possible that when people are listening to this, they're shopping. It could be the around the holiday season, where people are shopping for not just gifts, but deals or whatever they may be looking for. Is the appraisal business seasonal in that way?
Not really. Most appraisers won't discount their business because it's just not. They may around Christmas say, okay, bring in your engagement ring, we'll do your wedding band for free, that kind of
Yeah.
thing. But it's because it's all the knowledge. It's not
Yeah.
um it's not a product, a
Hmm.
thing that we give.
Yes. Yeah.
It's hard. You just don't discount it because
Yeah.
in the end you you just you make your brand not a good one. It's
That's
you're
right.
Yeah.
That's right. Discounting your knowledge is one thing that I think we all face. That if we're in a service industry, for example, where we are giving advice, we can't cheapen our advice. It's one thing to say I'll make less money on the object, on the product as a promotional cost or something like that. But when you're lending your expertise, you don't want to cheapen that. So that
Yeah,
makes total sense.
I always gave loyalty bonuses to my clientele. So if after, so many appraisals, they were still coming back to me, then they would get a discount. And it was just a reward of loyalty um, for using my services. So that was how I did it. And then there are, or I'd send a thank you card with a Tim Hortons card in with it, or
Yes.
that, to just say thank you for coming, and that could be the promotion,
Yeah.
for
Yeah,
that.
there are many ways to
Yeah.
say thank you, to customers and people for their loyalty, clients and so forth. In my experience, the more personal it is, the more meaningful it is. And that's just and that's a fitting way to kind of wrap up a talk about diamonds and appraisal. The value goes deeper than just the cut, but you definitely want to get the best cut you can.
Yes, that is true.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for coming on the show, Karen.
Thanks, Hirsch.
Alright.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and?
it worked for you,
Yes, then?
subscribe and leave a
Yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding